Greetings, Star Wars friends and Star Wars frenemies. There's a little story that slipped past my notice the last couple of days, and I probably should have noticed because it had to do with something important related to what I talk about on the channel, which is like the Star Wars franchise and how that's working at Lucasfilm. That apparently multiple Star Wars stories, those spin-off stories, are now on hold at Lucasfilm, and I'm going to go ahead and link this Collider article. However, sometimes it pays to be a little bit off the mark and to miss these kinds of stories. And if you're wondering how I miss them, I just don't interact with media all that much. I tend to do all of my news gathering tends to be reading. I don't watch TV or anything like that. So ABC, which is owned by Disney and Disney owns Lucasfilm, has said that that report is inaccurate and that there are multiple Star Wars films in the pipeline. They're currently being developed but haven't been announced. So does this mean that this Collider story is wrong? It actually doesn't, because of the way that this ABC spin presents the information is inaccurate. So there's a difference sometimes between not guilty and innocent, right? Innocent is the person didn't do it. Not guilty is the person hasn't been proven to do it. There's a difference between those two things. And that's the difference between inaccurate and just saying what is actually there. Saying, oh, it's inaccurate. Well, is it inaccurate in total, or is it inaccurate in part? Is only part of it inaccurate, or is everything about it a lie? So when you just say inaccurate, it could be that they slightly worded one thing wrong. It doesn't really mean that this Collider story is incorrect at all. Now, if you're Disney, you probably want to play your cards pretty close to your chest at this point because of the negativity that surrounded Solo, and also, I think, hurt Solo at the box office. Solo opened with $84 million. That's okay for most blockbuster movies. However, I think their expectations for a Star Wars movie were quite a bit higher. Rogue One, I think, did 150 or 155 million its first weekend, which is almost double what Solo did. So Solo is going to appear to be a disappointment. And I think there's a bunch of things that lead to that disappointment. The first one is the hype surrounding the movie. And the hype surrounding the movie was really not good hype. You had The Last Jedi, which happened and put a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths. So, of course, they're anti-hyped for Solo. You had a lot of negativity going into Solo. You have, shirts coming out, like Soilo shirts and things like that, that I think Uncle Ethan was putting out, things like that. A lot of negativity about this particular film, but not all of it was from fans who didn't like Last Jedi. A lot of it had to do with the fact that this movie had a really troubled production, and most people knew it. So if you know that the movie had the directors get fired and was reshot from the get-go, and you don't know that much about Ron Howard, or you might just choose to stay away because it looks like they probably dropped the ball on it, or they didn't know what they were doing. So that casual people probably stayed away. Another thing that I have to think about, which is very appealing, and multiple people have said this in my comments on my long tail video, is that the fans on the long tail, the really dedicated deep fans, affect the hype of the fans who are not that deep, who maybe just go see a Star Wars movie one time, because they're not dragging their friends to see it multiple times. They're not dragging their friends saying, you got to go see the Star Wars movie with me. They're not sharing the stories about Star Wars. They're not hyping it up. They're not posting on social media how excited they are to go see Solo. And so I find that hypothesis very appealing, and it's something I didn't consider, which is that the long tail affects the spike. I know the spike affects the long tail with Star Wars because people are interested in the franchise based on how good the movies were to get them into the franchise. But I didn't consider how those deep fans, through their actions and their social interactions, are driving the spike. So a good marketer thinks about how they're going to reach a number of people. A great social marketer thinks about how people are going to reach each other. And so this probably contributed to it. The fact that you had a lot of upset fans meant that tail portion of the fan base was really not driving those spike fans. It really wasn't driving the casual fans to go to the theaters well enough. So that's a very appealing hypothesis to me. And so as a result, if you're Disney, you want to keep your cards pretty close to your chest because you want to avoid any kind of this kind of social malaise, the anti-hype that went on for Solo. So you don't want to announce anything that you're not really sure you're going to do well with, and you're not ready to really promote and drive the hype for, because they really dropped the ball when it came to the hype for Solo. Now, does the quality of Solo affect its sales? I would say not as much as the marketing beforehand does, because the opening weekend, nobody's seen the movie. It's not until the multiple, the later weekends that people can socially spread how good or bad a movie was. And I think that's why Last Jedi had this big drop off, is that social spreading, is that the fans were like, this movie was really bad, don't go see it, or I'm not going to go see it again. All of that stuff, I think, affected Solo in a more pronounced way than would be obvious with something like Last Jedi. Now, in the Collider article, they say that they're still going to be having this Rian Johnson trilogy, which just seems suicidal and awful to me, but that the little spin-offs were canceled. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the spin-offs in general. They feel like they're milking the franchise a little bit, because it's like a movie about Han Solo. Let's take a popular character and let's just give him a movie. Did the movie say anything all that important about Han Solo? Not really. Nothing we really needed in order to understand his character. Everything we needed to understand Han Solo was pretty much in the original trilogy, and we didn't need this other movie to really explain where he came from. I might be more interested in Obi-Wan Kenobi's story just because I like Jedi and lightsabers. But the same thing with Star Wars. We didn't need Rogue One. We didn't need an explanation of how the Death Star was built. We see that they had the designs way back during Attack of the Clones. Because Count Dooku holds up a holographic projector. There's the Death Star. So they had it well before Luke and Leia were even born. They had fully designed the Death Star. Just an aside there. So yes, I think they want to play this pretty close to their hands, and they are just saying that it's inaccurate because they don't want the negative hype of like, oh, we have responded to the failure of this movie by acting appropriately and halting the style of movie that's not making us a lot of money. They're wanting to keep it vague so that they could spin it either way they want. They could say, well, it was a good business decision if they decide not to make more, and it was a good business decision if they decide to make more and they're successful. You can spin it really any way you want. Now, in production, I'm going to talk about this little one before I depart these lands and leave you back to your normal YouTube viewing. In production means a whole lot of different things. There's this huge, long period before a movie begins to be shot called pre-production. Pre-production can include all kinds of different phases. They can say that there's a movie, in production when they have two writers working on a script. In fact, that's probably what they mean by these multiple movies in production, is that they have writing rooms working on stories, working on scripts, working maybe on storyboards and things like that. Well before you start making sets, before you start hiring actors and actresses, before you start setting up a shooting schedule and lining up effects shots, all that kind of stuff. Before you start producing the movie, which is the most expensive part, you're doing pre-production. And if you're just doing the writing portion, it's actually very cheap. They might spend $100,000 just having writers sit there and come up with a bunch of different versions of a script. It's very cheap to have scripts made. The script writing process is, in fact, one of the cheapest parts of a movie production. So you can have a script stay in pre-production forever. You could be optioning a script and say it's in pre-production and just not really touch it and then throw it away later when you feel like you're not going to make a movie out of it, or the market's not ready for that particular script. So that's what I see as happening. There's probably just a bunch of movies like they're storyboarding them, they're writing treatments, they're running those by executives, they're writing script drafts, and then they could say that they're in production without really having to spend any money or take any risks. Once the real production starts to ramp up and you're having to build sets, hire actors, and do all that kind of stuff. So that's my take on this. I actually am more inclined to believe the Collider article than the ABC article because of how vague the ABC article is. It's like a political spin. If you merely say it's inaccurate, you're not really saying what's inaccurate about it. You have to be really, really specific. And I don't know. That's what I wanted to present to you guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. To me, that could indicate a very positive thing, that the business side of it is having something to do with the creative side of it, that it's going to be imposing some reality upon Lucasfilm for the way that they've handled this franchise with these first 4 movies, and you might actually have a correction. I really wasn't holding out any kind of hope personally, and I still don't really have that much hope that episode 9 will be good. In fact, I anticipate that it will be bad, and I don't have a lot of hope that Star Wars as a franchise could be saved or become really good or interesting again. But you never know. Like, if with a big company like Disney, you might have enough financial investment to kind of pull the leadership out, or inspire Kathleen Kennedy to run the business differently and to produce a different kind of story that's going to be more appealing to the fan base and more appealing to people in general. So I don't have that much hope. I think you guys have more hope than I do, but I would be really happy to see good things come out of Star Wars. I want to emphasize that. So anyway, have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time.